Intercultural relations are more than just politics. They affect everyday life, from the products we buy to the media we can access. So, how do you world build cultural relationships that truly impact your plot and characters? I'm sci-fi writer Casey Hudson, and this is a framework for creating relationships on a global level. Relationships can be antagonistic or amicable. They can be characterized by indifference or begrudging tolerance. And when you're talking about world powers, these sentiments are usually connected to how the nations choose to help or hurt each other's goals. Imagine a government that tries to open trade talks with a potential ally. They offer to share highly advanced technology not found anywhere else. They open trade routes that would otherwise be inaccessible. They ask for one thing in return. They want the future partner to shield a power source that makes some of their people unwell. Without the shield, many of their citizenry would be unable to visit this wondrous new place. It shouldn't be that big a deal, they reason. The shield would have no negative effect on the people. But then negotiations are abruptly halted, and the alliance initiators are told to leave. What went wrong? To answer that, we have to look at a few world building questions. What is each government bringing to the relationship? Are the contributions good, bad, irrelevant? The trick here is that good or bad is based on the perspective of the parties entering the relationship. One nation may think they're bringing something amazing like unique spices, but that good thing is seen differently if those spices are poisonous to the population of a would-be trading partner. And not only are the contributions important, but so is their weight. Do any of the benefits or detriments being brought into the relationship have greater worth? Maybe those spices are being traded alongside grain that the other nation is in dire need of. Think too about whether there are any factors that, if changed, could recharacterize the relationship. This is potentially the case with the example I shared earlier. The offer of technology piqued nation's interest, especially because an influx of advanced weapons could have tipped the balance of a war they've been fighting for decades. But the idea that off-worlders may come to visit was a deal breaker. Had Barbadai offered technology but not suggested an influx of travelers, they may have been able to reach an agreement. So, what does that mean for the current state of this relationship? Intercultural relationships ebb and flow, especially with changes in leadership. So, history may not match the current state. There are many instances of countries that cooperated in decades past, but a transition of power led to animosity. Maybe they were partners in trade or industry, but now they compete for the same resources. Perhaps a nation's people toppled a government and discarded all the old policies with it. On the other hand, two nations could have realized that together they have more bargaining power globally if they pool their resources. Could be that one nation's industry grew enough to serve as the processing plant for another nation's minerals. Or maybe, like the fictional relationship I've created, nothing's changed at all. In the example that I shared, the first conversation between Barbadai and Umfakrum was also the last. But that too has quietly affected the warring nation. History is important. Record it. Use it for conflict down the line. But remember the importance of the here and now. The present status of the relationship guides the assumptions and actions of current leadership and the people. Is the relationship between the two cultures in a good place? Is there conflict or discord, distrust because of past events and behaviors? And because we're essentially talking about politics here, think about whether there are any advantages or disadvantages to the relationship being in the current state. Maybe distrust underpins scapegoating, a rationale for implementing questionable policies. With my example, the current situation is unfavorable for Umfakrumpf Nation. Not only could they have used the technology and potential soldiers that an alliance would have afforded them, but their enemy was happy to oblige the off-worlders, opening their minds and their homes, and they have seen no end to the benefits that have come from that relationship, much to the detriment of Umfakrumpf Nation. And this is a relationship triangle that has tipped the balance of power, maybe for centuries to come. Power dynamics are embedded in connections between governments. One culture or leadership may have influence over another's actions, affecting trade or conflicts with other nations. Power within global relationships may take the form of a favor done today in exchange for a favor paid in the future. One nation's power may mean more favorable terms and conditions when negotiating treaties or contracts. Let's look at something like food in exchange for defense. While a food for defense exchange could be presented within an even power dynamic, it can also be presented as unbalanced. This is where you can add some distinguishing detail to your world. Maybe the food that's being offered will be discarded, so offering it in trade has no impact for either nation. And let's say this same nation is in a conflict that has resulted in overwhelming loss of life. And the defense is in the form of young, healthy, well trained soldiers. That's a scenario where the nation is giving nothing in exchange for something very valuable. Clearly, the offering nation is in a position of power. Why else would the receiving nation agree to such unfavorable terms? What could be thought of the power dynamic if, instead, the nation offering food in exchange for defense actually needed that food to feed an increasingly starving population? Or what if the nation providing defense was in a war of their own, one that is predicted to escalate quickly? How might bargaining terms change, and how would they be affected by a government's relative power? To begin world building complex power dynamics, begin looking at why and how any of the strengths, assets, weaknesses, or liabilities that a government has affects how they are viewed, and not just how one nation views them. How much power does the government have globally or interplanetarily? And how can the government leverage their strengths and reputation? Or how do their weaknesses damage them in unexpected ways? Coming back to my example one more time, Umbergrumpf Nation was in a position of power when they were first approached with the alliance. They had resources and cultural interests that were valued by the Barpadai. But when they turned the peoples of Barpadai away, they gifted that power to their enemy. An enemy who was able to offer similar benefits and services. This gifted power is so great, it could end a war. End a war because some of the most interesting innovations are military technology. Like my fictional world's warbot, that's simple enough for a child to operate. But I'll talk about that in a couple weeks. Until next time, stay inspired.